Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. It's good to see you on this typical British summer evening. Tonight we welcome back, we're very pleased to welcome back Mark Thompson, who's going to talk to us about how the home affects our health, and hopefully he'll be able to give us some insight into what we can do about it. So thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me all right at the back? Great stuff. I need to set your expectations here. I'm going to thoroughly depress you over the next 3/4 of an hour, and then I'm hopefully going to say some stuff at the end that makes you, oh, that's all right, we don't need to worry about it, because this is quite a sobering subject in some ways. And my background, a little bit about my background to begin with. Are you sure that volume's okay? Fine, okay, cool. I'm an energy person, really. I'm not a health person. I've worked in science, engineering, and technology all my life. I retired in February. The last 15 years, I was in energy. In the last few years, I've been really a specialist and an expert in home energy and home energy efficiency. And I get a real kick and a real buzz going into a home or being invited into a home to find out why is the home not warm enough, why the energy bill's so high, and to help people understand how to have a better set of outcomes and more comfort and lower bills and so on. So that's that's what really motivates me, really gets me fired up. It's a bit of a legal high, really, for me. And so I'm an energy person underneath, but what I'm really passionate about as well is educating people about home energy so that people will make better decisions for themselves and get more from energy for less money and better outcomes and better comforts and so on. So I started this website up, Get Energy Savvy, little advert for there. I started this up 2 years ago to help people understand energy in the home much better. It's an educational website. If you want to know about how to keep cool in summer, how to use your radiator valves, how expensive is it to run an instant hot water tap, there's all sorts of information on there. It's not a commercial website, it's just a hobby. There isn't even any advertising on there. So my role and what motivates me is educating people about energy principally. And last October, I did a talk, which you can stream if you didn't see it, all about heating homes and how you can have a more comfortable home and save money and so on and so on. But the reason I'm here and the reason there's a link with energy to this talk is that there's a really strong link between the environment in your home from an energy point of view and your health, and how your home affects your health as well as how much energy you use. And just having a focus on trying to save energy, trying to keep heat in, if you do that with too rigid a mindset, you can easily trip yourself up and create a sting in the tail, which is some health issues off the back of that. So that's what I'm going to tell you about today. So this is the sort of the hidden sting in the tail, really, about home energy efficiency, which can catch people out and will be catching many people out day to day, I guarantee. So this is a lot of insights about the link between the two that I guarantee you. So it won't be cheering you up in the next half an hour, 45 minutes, but it will at the end. And what I won't be talking about today, just to also pre-position you, I won't be talking about cold in homes and how that affects your health. I won't be talking about mold and damp issues and how that affects your health. I won't be talking about secondary smoking, and I won't be talking about carbon monoxide in your home. I'm going to talk about essentially what you may have heard as sick building syndrome. Is that an expression people have heard ever? It tends to be associated with commercial buildings and office buildings, but it applies to homes as well. And the thing about homes is nothing educates us in life about how to run a home from an energy point of view, or how to keep it healthy indoors. And homes can very easily make you feel either unproductive, unwell, or actually quite poorly, and actually contribute to long-term health issues. So homes are really actually much more than simple boxes we live in. They don't actually do a very good job of keeping us healthy, as I will show you why. In contrast, a car, particularly a modern car, is extremely good at keeping you very safe and very healthy, with a very well-controlled internal environment and lots of systems that take care of all sorts of things in the event of a crash. Homes are really pretty dull and poor boxes at looking after our health. So what do I know? Where am I coming from all this? So let's start with a little bit of evolutionary history. Humans have been around, we've been around something like 200,000 years in the sort of form that we are at the moment. And we started off living in caves, pretty cold, pretty drafty things. And as we became gradually more civilized over the centuries, we evolved homes that were gradually getting better, more comfortable, more warmer, still very drafty over the last 200,000 years. But of course, most of this development was quite recent in actual fact in the timeline. So we have lived in cold, drafty boxes for most of the evolutionary development of our DNA and how we're wired. The problem we've now got, though, is that over the last 10, 20 years, we've developed a mindset of sealing the heat in, sealing the home up, trying to make it as draft-proof as possible, trying to keep the cold out and save pennies through insulation, which is great, of course, but of course trying to keep the home draft-free as a way of saving energy. And the result is there's been a tension that's been building up over the last 10 or 20 years between the needs of trying to seal the heat in a home and the need to actually ventilate a home and help the home breathe and help you breathe a healthy atmosphere in the home. And the net result of all of that is we've gone probably a bit too far in sealing homes up. So I visit lots of homes in the Northwich area. I do free surveys for the local community to help them understand energy efficiency in the home. And I go into many homes and I'll either find the whole house or individual rooms are virtually airtight. Certainly some rooms I go into, I think, where on earth is the oxygen going to get into this room? How on earth is the carbon dioxide going to get out of this room? We've gone too far and we've got a mindset that thinks we have to achieve a pretty airtight home. And actually that's really poor for us, for our health, because we are not biologically designed to work, live and survive healthily in airtight boxes. And that's the way we're going. Okay, there are lots of people who have got really old drafty windows and drafty homes and open fireplaces. They still exist, of course, but many homes have gone too far. And the result is indoor air pollution. You'll sometimes see it referred to as having poor air quality. I think that's a very poor choice of words. It's actually indoor air pollution. I'm going to give you lots of examples in the next half an hour, 40 minutes, and the impacts on you, but also what you can do about it as well. It's important to say, although I'm an energy person, in the last year of my career, before I retired, I spent a lot of time and effort focusing on this agenda. I read hundreds of technical papers to learn about this and talk to lots of people in the industry, specialists, including some very senior scientists on the subject. So everything in this presentation is based on robust science and expert views that are really, really very solid. And I have backed it up, as you will see, by some amusing experiments I've done on myself to try and understand this agenda in my own terms, in my own context, and so on. But what I'm telling you now is based on very, very well developed and very well proven science. And there's another information resource if you're interested, and I'll show this URL at the end, which is a new website that a contact of mine in the industry started up just a few months ago to help explain all this sort of stuff in more straightforward household lay terms, because there is an awful lot of information out there on the internet about indoor air pollution. But this particular site is intended to be really, really good at communicating it in straightforward, lifestyle-orientated terms. So go to that website and you can subscribe to updates on it. And it's just started up recently, but it's going to be growing rapidly in the next 6 to 12 months with more information. So the impact spectrum of indoor air pollution is at two very, very different ends, and I'll give some examples of those. Very clear, specific examples. One is at the very, very, the most harmless end of the spectrum is just how it affects your energy levels, your personal productivity, and at the very dark end of the spectrum, and I'm not kidding here, and I'll show you some numbers in a minute that might surprise you, it does lead to premature deaths in the UK. And on that subject, here are some numbers. So Premature deaths per year in the UK, this is people dying much earlier than they need to. Road deaths in the UK is somewhere around the 1,700 mark per year in the UK. Approximately 10,000 people, something of that order, die early because of homes that are too cold. Roughly somewhere in the region of 48,000 people die in the UK from outdoor air pollution, traffic pollution, etc., etc. Would anybody like to hazard a guess at how many people die from pollution generated inside the home? Any guesses? Somebody about, I don't know, anyway. Oh, the slide's got up. Oh, no. I didn't do that. Who waved a magic wand? It's 20,000. So that number isn't widely known. This whole, everything I'm telling you about now is not widely known in the public, which is why I wanted to go out and do talks about it. And that number was quite hard to find. That's from a specialist academic at Chester University. And that's a figure that other people I've spoken to widely agree with is about right. So we're seeing large numbers dying from outdoor pollution prematurely, but really a very significant number from pollution that is generated inside the home. And the worst sources, and I'll show you some more examples, are cooking. That's the worst of the worst. I'll say more about it, but in general terms, there is a cocktail of chemicals floating around in a building all the time. Microscopic particles and molecules of everything from chemicals in the home, cooking stuff from you, humidity and moisture, and they all react as a sort of chemical soup that is still at the very early stages of being understood. But what we do know from it is that what we've got building up in these airtight boxes in homes is actually not good enough, not good for you at all. And at the sharp end of the stick, the dark end of the stick, the number of deaths, the death toll from indoor air pollution is something like 20,000 deaths per year in the UK. It's really purely domestic. In some areas, you'll get a little bit from external as well. But this is the bit that they've estimated is due to internal air pollution. Come to that later. Yeah, we will come to that later. So I'm going to give you a simple overview of the sources, symptoms, and those most affected, and then I'm going to go into some specifics. So the sources are in three broad types. One is from burning or intensely heating stuff, and I'll show you some more examples coming up. The second is from chemicals that you use in the home, very varied. And the third source is stuff from us that we either breathe or bits that drop off us in terms of dead skin cells and pets as well. So those are the three rough sources, and lifestyle things that generate moisture in the air as well. And in terms of symptoms, at the very relatively harmless end of the spectrum is the effect on how you feel, your productivity levels, your energy levels. If you're in a stuffy room, you won't be feeling as energetic as if you are in a well-ventilated room. So that's really stuff about that's at the weak end of the spectrum where you're feeling you're not as alert as you might be, and your energy levels are low. And I would say many people in up and down the country, most people will be suffering from some of what I described at this sort of soft end of the spectrum. Then you get into a sort of middle zone of symptoms of sort of irritation of the eyes, nose, or throat, headaches, dizziness, or just not feeling very well. Yeah. And then the more difficult end of the spectrum, the bit that's really health orientated, is asthma and lung conditions, as you might expect from something that's floating around in your air and the effects on that. Significant impacts there. There are approximately 5.5 million people in the UK with asthma at the moment, so that's 1 in 12 people. So that's probably 2 people in here, 3 people in here maybe. And other respiratory diseases, including cancer, are all part. These are all part of that, all contribute to the 20,000 figure. And then heart disease and dementia are also there's strong links with those as well. In fact, dementia is known to be linked to air pollution indoors and outdoors, as are many of the others, of course. And then those that are most affected, well, there are a number of most vulnerable groups: elderly, those with underlying conditions, particularly lung conditions, pregnant women, because pollution, whether it's indoor or outdoor, affects birth weight, it affects miscarriage rates, it affects lung development in young children, and so on and so on. There's some really serious sensitivities there, but in many respects, we are all at risk from this. And all these little things add up, but we are all at risk to some degree, and our lifestyle and our wellness and how we feel is affected in all of it, for all of us to some degree. And just one other little statistic on asthma, a statement by an expert, a clinical expert in this area, not very long ago, was that in his view, and this was a statement he made to a committee in government, was that asthma, in his view, was going to rise by 80% by 2040, unless indoor pollution is addressed. That's a pretty strong statement and pretty serious. So asthma alone is something that is the standout reason, one of the standout reasons to take this whole thing really, really seriously, given the number of people that are affected by it, and you can't be cured of asthma. All you can do is live with it better. And actually, the third most common cause of children going to A&E, as presenting themselves with a problem that's worthy of A&E, the third most common reason is from asthma and lung conditions, which is a mix of indoor and outdoor causes, of course, but that is a pretty shocking figure. The third most common cause for children to go to hospital is from lung conditions like asthma. So that's the beginning of cheering you up. Now there's a little bit of a quiz, and I'm not going to reveal the answer this time, I promise. So we're building up stuff in the home, sort of toxins and stuff that's not very good for us, carcinogens, all sorts of things that make us feel unwell. Again, more information about this coming up. And of course, we have to get rid of it. And building regulations in the UK does have a recommendation for how often you need to change the air in a home. So has anybody got any ideas would like to give me a figure as to how often you need to change the air in a room or in a home in a day? 5 times a day? Yep, one guess. The recommendation at the minimum for every room is every 2 hours. Now that sounds crazy from an energy efficiency point of view, and you're going to lose all that warm air, but believe me, it isn't, because air actually holds very little energy. So it's actually not an inefficient thing to do at all, but from a health point of view, it's really, really important. And that every 2 hours, so 12 times a day, is the general recommendation for every room where there's occupancy. Bathrooms more, because you're trying to get rid of moisture as well, and kitchens a lot more. So I think it's 6 times for a kitchen, and of course that's not when you're cooking, that's just general. So we need to be changing the air every 2 hours. So 12 times a day is how we need to think about this, and that is a good positive thing to do for your health, and it has virtually no impact on energy at all. And again, I'll give you some more figures on that later. So on to the sources. So there are 3 general sources. The first one being burning or intensely heating stuff. The worst in terms of your health impacts is cooking, particularly if you're heating anything fatty or oily, because that's creating atomized products of an oil, basically, into the air. You're inhaling particles that are created from the burning from the heating process, and that's known to be collectively the worst area for your health in terms of the impacts that I talked earlier. Is from cooking, especially from frying pans and grills. But really, even if it's something that isn't particularly oily or greasy or fatty that you might think of, there's still particles going into the air in a kitchen. But frying pans in particular are really bad. And burning anything is really bad. So I've got a number of air quality monitors that I've been experimenting with over the last year. We've got one in the kitchen that monitors particulates, which are the sort of carcinogenic particles that you get from cooking and other sources, but mainly cooking. And when I use my grill on the right and my sandwich maker on the right here, if it isn't spotlessly clean, our kitchen particulate monitor goes absolutely bonkers. It goes through the roof, off the scale, within seconds of me starting to fry. Starting to turn that on. So we now open the windows. Before we start to use this thing, I'm actually even thinking about using it outside because we've got a covered area, because it generates so much in terms of very, very unpleasant chemicals, particles, I should say. And toast the same. When we burn the toast, the gadget goes absolutely mental every time, and really, really quickly. And then also, even in a kitchen situation, self-cleaning ovens work by superheating the oven to burn off all the fat that might be stuck to the sides of the oven. That creates lots of microparticles or PM2.5s as well. So self-cleaning an oven, if you're using a self-cleaning oven feature, open the windows. So cooking and microwaving is the same. If you're microwaving something that's fatty in particular, you'll create this stuff. Is really bad news. So look at what your nose is telling you. If you can smell food, if you can smell burning cooking in the kitchen, it's probably best to assume it's not doing you any good. Then the other hazard in the kitchen is cooking on gas. So we've still got about half the homes in the UK that cook on a gas hob. The gas is obviously less common for ovens these days. About half the homes cook on gas on the hob. And there's a recent article published, actually, I think it was The Guardian here, from a scientific paper that was released, which really raised the alarm bells for this, to try and raise awareness of cooking on gas as a hazard. And one of the statements from this particular technical paper was that cooking on gas in a kitchen frequently leads to levels of indoor air pollution that would be illegal outdoors. And the general consensus is if we'd never cooked on gas indoors, and we now decided we wanted to start cooking on gas indoors, no one would have it. And no one would accept the health risks that it creates by doing so, because it creates nitrous oxide gases, which are similar byproducts to car exhaust. So the very simple message with gas is, if you're cooking on gas, get off it if you possibly can. So other healthier approaches you can take to cooking. There are lots of really dedicated people who've done lots of experiments on extractor hoods and how efficient they are when you're cooking. And they all showed that actually an extractor hood or often not actually terribly good. And there's a lot of the particulates and gases from cooking when you're cooking on a hob, which actually escape into the room. They don't extract it all. And they've measured all these concentrations and so on. So they've done some fantastic experiments which have come up with some strong recommendations. And they are, put the pans towards the back when you're cooking. So don't, if you're frying, fry towards the back of the hob, and let the extractor try and extract as much as it possibly can. Don't fry near you, because the extractor will only be able to draw away a portion of the pollution, not all of it. Always extract on full. Extractors are generally barely adequate, and putting it on full is strong recommendation of the work that I've seen. And open windows to let fresh air in, to let the extractor itself work more efficiently. It will be able to suck air out of the room if you can let fresh air into the room as well. And if you've got an extractor, make sure, first of all, that it's one that does actually extract to the outside and it doesn't just recirculate it to the room, because that's doing no good at all. And keep the grills degreased regularly, because as soon as they start to get greased up, they will stop working and reduce the amount of pollution that's being extracted from your kitchen. And then there's another very simple trick you can do with a frying pan. So I know someone's done some simple experiments doing this. There's no scientific work on it yet. But if you're frying something in a pan and you've got one of these grease deflector devices, they're very good, and they may reduce the pollution by maybe a half by containing it down to the pan itself. So cooking isn't brilliant, and cooking is the worst source, and there are things that you can do about it that are actionable to help you stay safe and stay healthy in the long term, which is what this is all about. So in terms of burning stuff, there are other things that we might do in a home too. So candles, what's not to like about a candle? Everybody loves candles and the atmosphere that they create. We're all very familiar with, the fact that cars create pollution, and it's good to see it visualized here. I have the microphone. This is a new factory in here as well. So we're all familiar with, car pollution is something that's harmful, but the byproducts from candle burning are actually very similar to the pollution products from a car exhaust. So I've done some experiments at home where I took a single tea candle like this. I put it on the mantelpiece in our lounge, which is a fairly decent sized lounge. And I left one of my pollution monitors in there to see what would happen. I did this last December, and even with a single 9 gram tea candle, I experienced a very high level of pollution in the room. Initially when I lit it, and then it dropped down a bit, and then it picked back up again when it was about to go out. So even a tiny little candle in a room will create pollution that's actually really rather unwarranted and unnecessary and unwanted. So I looked into what the official position is on candles. I found there is a trade association in USA called the National Candle Association. On my website, it says, burn candles in a well-ventilated room and avoid burning too many in a small room where air change is restricted. Who knew that? Who would think that you need to ventilate a room when you're using a candle? But this is a very clear recommendation. So then I went around the shops in Northwich and I looked at what candles actually said on them. And they said many things like don't leave them near curtains, don't let children play with them, etc. And of all the products I saw a variety of different warnings and messages. Some said, do not burn for more than an hour. Some said, burn for no more than 3 hours. Some said, only use in a well-ventilated room. Another one said, ventilate a room after use. And another one said, do not use near pregnant women, infants, and those with respiratory disorders, all in the fine print on different candle products. And most alarmingly of all, quite a lot of them said absolutely nothing about ventilation. And actually they all should, because they're all using basically the same chemicals to make them do what they do. And having become aware of all this sort of stuff in the last year, 18 months, I visited a bar in Chester late last year, and there's a bar there, quite a small bar. It's probably about 15 feet by 18 feet, something like that. It's like somebody's front room, and it's almost entirely lit by candles. It was fairly full of people, lots of candles in there, and I sat down and I started to drink, and I immediately started to feel not unwell, but I could start to feel my eyes were stinging a bit, my lips were stinging a bit. It was really extremely unpleasant in there. The staff clearly are in there the whole evening and exposed to it. An extremely unhealthy atmosphere, and clearly no one had any idea enjoying their drink on a Friday night. And actually there were probably 30 or 40 candles in there that were making it a very toxic environment. So I drank up and got out as quickly as I could. So healthier approaches with candles. The best thing you can do is banish them, and I did that. I rounded up all the ones we got at home, and all the metal went in the scrap for the metal, and the rest of it went in the wheelie bin. And that is, to be honest, that's the best thing to do. If you don't want to do that and you want to keep candles and keep on using them, all I can say is ventilate really, really well. like really well, like windows open at least a few inches to make sure you minimize the impact on you. And then one of the sort of close cousin products to candles that seems to go along with them often is incense sticks. Again, I took an incense stick and I put it in the lounge and I put my air quality or pollution monitor in there. And again, I got a very high spike for the time that the incense stick was burning, and then it tailed off because incense sticks have got all sorts of stuff in them. It's generating large quantities of particulate matter. No idea what's in them. They do say, but it's stuff that we're not biologically used to, that's for sure. And then I looked at the recommendations on a number of products. I went around the shops in Northwich looking at the packets of incense sticks to see what they said. And this particular first one said use in a well-ventilated room. I picked another one up and it said use in a well-ventilated room. And I picked another one up and it said use in a well-ventilated room. And basically that's what you should do. But I did find again some that said absolutely nothing. And okay, most people wouldn't read the instructions. They wouldn't be aware that they should use them in a well-ventilated room. You would expect the manufacturers to at least cover themselves legally by saying that they should, and they should. So there's a theme here, as I'm sure you'll be aware, which is ventilation. Then the other thing that we do is the last bit on burning stuff, I think, which is about log burners. And log burners, what's not to like about a log burner? Everybody wants one. The sales for them have gone bonkers in the last 2 or 3 years. They're already over 2 million in the UK. There is a very strong faction, there's a very strong tribe of people who believe that they're a healthy thing to sit in front of, that they believe that any attempts to take them off them are a conspiracy theory, and that all this stuff about health effects of log burners is actually a lie. And there's a Facebook group of 140,000 log burner people who are passionately believe that it's a natural thing to do because we've always done it for 200,000 years. And if you suggest to them that there's a pollution issue with log burners, you'll come home to find a horse's head in your bed, basically. And they are a very unpleasant group of people. I apologize to any of you who might be on that group and thinking that camp. But the bottom line is log burners now are a cause of 13% of the UK particulate emissions. This is the small stuff, the PM 2.5 stuff, which are often carcinogens. So the pollution, that type of pollution from log burners is now more than road transport. Okay. Because people are using them as a lifestyle thing. Of course they are. And it's as well as being a significant source of outdoor air pollution, it's also a significant source of indoor pollution. And again, these are measurements I've done in my own lounge because I've got 2 log burners. And I got huge quantities of wood that I've built up over the years, all for free from various sources, and I've stopped using them. We haven't used them this year because no matter what we did, we couldn't use them in any way where we got acceptable limits from the emissions from it inside the house, inside the lounge, and the other room that we use as well. So they are a significant source of indoor air pollution, no matter what anyone might say otherwise. We have stopped using ours. There was a study recently published in America showing that using a log burner for 30 or more days increased the risk of lung cancer by 68%. So that's using it once or twice a week through the winter. Gives you a substantial risk of increasing getting lung cancer. So that alone is something that is a pretty shocking statistic that should motivate people. It certainly motivated me to stop using it because I want to live as healthy as I can for as long as I can. Hi.
You have an absolute thing, 100%.
I can dig out the work and paper if you like. I haven't got it here. It's 6 months ago I read it, so I don't know. I haven't got any more numbers on that particular story in my head, I'm afraid. Sure. Yeah. No. Of course. Yeah, no, I don't have any numbers for lung cancer in the UK. Sorry, no, I don't. But I should also say that on this point, lung and asthma charities are pleading, and they have used the word pleading on some of their social media. They are pleading with people not to use them unless it's the only way of heating their home. Okay.
Yeah, I was supposed to log to them and say you're going there.
I can't give you a straight answer for that here now. Sorry. Depends how often you use it. I have no idea. I can't tell you the numbers, I'm sorry. No. Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know. This is all a very complicated subject, but in its, so I can't make that comparison here without doing some thinking and do some research, I'm afraid. Sorry. So yes, it's not just me saying this. From what I've read, you look on the lung and asthma charities in the UK, and they are pleading for people not to use them, as are the health charities similarly in other countries. Like Australia's got major problems. Many of the European countries have got problems. Even countries like Austria, where wood burning is extremely endemic and traditional, the authorities and the health professionals there are pleading with people not to burn wood because they don't actually need to. They're doing it because they like to. Coal, probably worse. I don't know, but it's probably worse because you've got other things coming out of coal like sulfur, and I'm not an expert in combustion of that sort, sorry. I mean, the history of coal and coal burning and health issues around lungs is well known. Yeah. So here's a tangible example of the issue I have locally in my rural village. I've got a house ventilation system, and this is the inlet filter to it. This is what it looks like when it's clean. During winter, if I clean it, because I clean it 2 or 3 times a year, this is what it looks like. And this is filtering out the smog that comes from log burners in my local area in a village in Cheshire. And this isn't because I've been using it, because I stopped using it. So that's when I last cleaned it. And that's always been like that. Every winter I've cleaned that filter. It's always like that in winter. It's never like that in summer because people are using log burners locally. This is a whole house ventilation system I've got, so it's not a normal situation. It's in the loft. That unit's in the loft, and it brings fresh air in. Yeah. So healthier approaches to using log burners are use it less than not at all. Only use the driest wood, and the recommendation is always at least keep it below 20% moisture content. Minimize the door opening. Check the door seal condition, and ventilate the room really well. But I say in my own experiments, I found I really had to leave the patio door open and the kitchen door open and the lounge window open really to make a substantial reduction in the internal pollution generated by the one log burner I did some experiments on. And then open fires, I haven't done anything on that, but obviously that's going to be a worse situation almost certainly. So the second source, I told you I was going to share you all that. Is chemicals and things that we might put into the home that are chemicals that we biologically didn't evolve with. I pulled four bottles at random from our kitchen cabinet a few months ago and looked at the instructions on them all. They all said they were harmful to health. 3 of them said they're really harmful to aquatic life with long-lasting environmental impacts. And 2 of them said ventilate well when using. We never read these things. I certainly didn't realize that 2 of them needed to have a vented environment, but that's what they said. And we tend to take these things, we tend to be quite blasé perhaps about use of chemicals, and we'll spray bleach on all sorts of things. And all these things put chemicals into the environment in the home, particularly if we're using aerosols, which have created more problems of some sorts. And if you look at air freshener products, they will, not always, but they will often say, use in a well-ventilated room. And yet you think an air freshener product is such that you don't need to ventilate the room, but actually they typically say use in a well-ventilated room. And some of the advertising is quite mischievous in my view. This is one of the lines from the Airwick commercial, which is, you're breathing a breath of fresh Airwick. You're not breathing fresh air at all. You're breathing some chemicals that you can smell that you like that might mask another smell, but you're not breathing fresh air at all. And then I mentioned aerosols. We're using aerosols more than we ever used to in the last few decades for ease of use and getting things, getting products that will have more effect and help us achieve what we want to do, such as deodorizing, for example. But there are something like 17 deaths a year in the UK from people using aerosols like body sprays in a confined space, and they have effectively a heart attack triggered by that. inhaling the propellant from that product. And there was a tragic case last year of a 14-year-old girl who died within minutes of using a body deodorant. I think it was in her bedroom under a duvet. So we tend to, have a bit of a gung-ho attitude to these sorts of things. So healthier approaches to chemicals in the home are minimize their use, avoid anything that creates fine sprays or aerosols. They can be very effective at getting a chemical onto a surface onto us, but actually they put stuff into the air as well. And follow the instructions, especially on ventilation. And the last bit on chemicals, laundry out the washing machine has a certain smell about it. Some people put conditioning products in to make them smell even more. Those smells are artificial, of course. We don't use any of the additional stuff. We just use ordinary liquid at home. We don't put conditioner in or anything that enhances the smell. So I did a test with a rack of laundry, a bit like that, in the lounge, left it there for a bit with my volatile organic compound meter in there, and it registered a pretty high reading for that particular load of washing, drying. So the simple message with laundry drying is either use stuff that's low in terms of chemical content and nothing extra if you can avoid it in terms of additional features, because that will create additional smells, and dry outside if you can, particularly for the first few hours. Let the volatile organic compounds dry off before the sort of water does itself, so that you can protect yourself from that. Now the next section, the last section, is about humans and pets. And the first one is about dust. You may be aware that a proportion of dust is from human cells. It's from us and the cells from our body. Now, I used to think that dusting in the home was only important to do because my mum told me to do it. There's a very good reason for actually keeping dust levels down. And the reason is that dust has got a proportion of stuff that's from us, a proportion of stuff from our pets, skin cells, etc., and dust mites, which are quite literally everywhere in our home in very large quantities. They love it. It's like chocolate to them. And dust mites are very tiny. They're about 1/4 millimeter long, and there are, one estimate was 100,000 per square meter of carpet in a home. Yeah, I know, it's lovely, isn't it? Don't worry, this picture gets worse in a minute. It gets more gruesome. So they look gorgeous and they're a bit Jurassic Parky, but they're everywhere and they're invisible, and they eat dust. Why is that a problem? Because when they eat dust, they poo dust. Yes, so they create dust mite feces or dust mite poo. Now you know what it looks like. But why is that a problem? That's a problem because we inhale it. It contributes to the dust in the home, and this stuff is not very pleasant, and it can trigger allergies, and it can be responsible for asthma attacks as well. So I take dusting much more seriously now. But there are other healthier approaches. So healthier approaches to solve this human or pet-induced problem is hoover carpets regularly and dust regularly. No brainer there. Move to hard flooring surfaces if you can do so. That will significantly reduce the home for dust mites to live. And manage humidity well as well. High humidity is a much more productive breeding ground for dust mites than a low humidity home. So they will thrive and grow and multiply much more rapidly if you have a high humid home. And the last bit about sources of pollution from us and animals. Yes?
You ever tried your particulate meter while vacuuming?
No. Good idea. I haven't thought of that. No, I haven't tried that. No.
Vacuuming.
Hey?
Vacuuming.
Well, vacuuming stirs stuff up. It will blow stuff out. That's why you see some hoovers have got HEPA filters. It's to try and capture some of the stuff that it's pulling out of the carpet. It can't capture it all. Some of it will get through the filter at the back. But no, I haven't tried it. So there's one last pollutant, which is really important, which is not really a health thing, but it's more of a well-being thing. What do I mean? It's something that we all do, which is breathing out carbon dioxide. We all breathe in oxygen. We burn oxygen with the sugars inside us, to create the energy that we use to live, but we breathe out carbon dioxide, which is a waste product from doing that. And if we don't breathe out carbon dioxide efficiently, if we can't get rid of it, we start to feel unwell because our blood acidity levels start to rise. But we all generate carbon dioxide every breath that we breathe out, and the more active you are, the more that you breathe out. So why is that a problem? Well, carbon dioxide has a number of impacts. The levels of it in the environment and around us in the room that we're in. So the background carbon dioxide levels and concentration across the planet are around 400 parts per million. That's fine, that's okay. It used to be a lot lower, it used to be below 300. So we've got used to breathing air that is more carbon dioxide rich. As the concentration levels go up, it starts to affect how we feel and how our brain works effectively. And it starts to affect how comfortable we feel. And you get to a level of about 700, where you start to get into some higher levels where you see some marginal cognitive dysfunction. You can't think so clearly, you can't concentrate as well, as the levels of carbon dioxide in a room start to rise, because if you're in an airtight room, carbon dioxide levels will start to rise. So you get up to about sort of 700 to 1,000 is where you're starting to get into some noticeable effects. If the carbon dioxide levels in a room continue to rise beyond that, it gets even worse, and I'll show you in a moment. But there's been a number of studies have shown that you can get something like a 20% decline in your ability to think clearly with a rise of carbon dioxide from 600 to 1,000. But as you climb, as a room becomes more and more concentrated with carbon dioxide, if you don't get rid of it, we get into headaches, drowsiness, lethargy, and then beyond that, you can get up to 5,000 and more, where you can actually create a risk of death because of high concentrations. And I'll show you an example in a moment. So carbon dioxide is really important to try and keep low. If you're in an airtight room, it will naturally rise, and these are the sorts of effects you will have. It's mainly around day-to-day, it's really around cognitive function and how well you feel and how much energy you've got and whether you feel sleepy. So and also as an aside, the Apollo 13 mission, where the mission obviously went very wrong, and they had at one point excessive carbon dioxide levels in there, which was the subject of a film you may have seen. Carbon dioxide levels in Apollo 13 reached somewhere around 20,000 parts per million. It's part of that disaster, which they obviously survived, but it was a pretty grim time. So that's an extraordinary level, but astronauts are selected to be tolerant to carbon dioxide, which helped them get through that. So I did some experiments at home. I've got a bedroom at home which we use as a study. It's a sort of typical single bedroom, got enough space for 2 desks in it, and I can just about swing the cat in there. And I did an experiment on myself one day last December. I shut myself in the study, I shut the window, I shut the vent off, so I sat there working all day for about 8 hours. Door shut, window shut, me sat at a laptop in the corner of the room. And I started to record on a device I've got what the carbon dioxide levels were in the room. And the background level naturally would have been 400 parts per million at the bottom there, that little blue line. And the level you don't really want to go above is 1,000. You want to keep it well below 1,000, really, ideally 600 or 700. But 1,000 is really the maximum level you want to go to in any room before you need to start to do something about it. So I shut myself in there at sort of 8:30 in the morning, and within 40 minutes, the carbon dioxide levels had risen to past 1,000. So it rose very quickly. And I carried on sitting there, and I watched what the reading was, and I carried on doing something very straightforward, which was just email type stuff. And the level kept on climbing. And at about 10:30, 11 o'clock, a colleague on a Zoom call I was on asked me whether I was okay, because I was starting to make even less sense than normal, were her words. And I was starting to feel a little bit lightheaded. I was starting to find it hard to think what I wanted to say. But I carried on working, and starting to feel quite spaced out. The morning wore on. And then I took a 40-minute lunch break, by which time, sort of 12:30, 1 o'clock, whenever it was, the level had reached 3,000 parts per million. And then I came back after 40 minutes, and I sat in there and shut the door, and it carried on. And it carried on climbing and climbing and climbing throughout the day. And got to about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and I was finding it pretty hard to do even basic things. I realized I was suffering from carbon dioxide exposure. So I decided I'm going to do something really simple, which is do some modifications to a spreadsheet that are quite straightforward. And I found even that quite hard work. So I was starting to really feel the effects of carbon dioxide poisoning effectively, when all I was sitting in my room at home, like anybody would, working from home with the door shut and the window shut. That's it. There's nothing more scientific to it than that. Doing something that many people do up and down the country every day, working from home in particular, or students. And at one point, 3 o'clock, 3:30 or so, my heart actually started racing. And as we got towards the end of the afternoon, I was really feeling horrible, and I wanted the experiment to end. I wanted to get out there. It was the most awful day, and I didn't do as much work as I should have. But then I solved the problem by opening the door, and the carbon dioxide levels plummeted, and instantly I started to feel much better. So I was effectively getting rid of all that carbon dioxide that had been building up in that room, and it was just billowing out into the rest of the house. That was day one. Within half an hour, I was feeling a lot better. Yeah, I mean, instantly, it's like when you're in a stuffy room and you go outside, you very quickly feel better. And if you're in a stuffy room and you're going outside, you're going outside because you're in a room that's probably got too much carbon dioxide.
Is it mainly due to carbon dioxide? That's the main problem in these offices.
Yes. Well, in this situation, yes, this is a domestic office. This isn't a commercial office. Commercial offices are ventilated. You good ones, you see the ventilation around the roof, around the ceilings in a commercial office, in good quality offices. In some, obviously not in some poor quality offices. No, that's where the sick building syndrome comes in. Yeah, and that's why modern buildings have got ventilation considered properly. So that was day one. That was me shut in a room with the door shut and the window shut, and that's it. No more unusual than that as an experiment. And day two, the following day, I did exactly the same thing, but I left the door open 30 millimeters. I wedged it open 30 millimeters, and the results were dramatically different. The carbon dioxide levels did pick up a bit, and I had a lunch break, and they dropped back down again. But the maximum it got to in the afternoon was about 1,800 parts per million. So I still didn't feel quite brilliant. It wasn't my most productive day, if you know what I mean. But it was a completely different experience to the day before. Completely different, transformative. And the lesson from this and from other experiments about sleeping, which I'll talk about in a moment, is if you're in a small room and it's you working from home, you need the door open a bit or a lot, and or the window open a crack as well to give you enough ventilation to keep the levels of carbon dioxide low if you want to stay productive. And I should say that before I got into measuring all this sort of stuff, I used to find myself quite headachy in the afternoon because I kept the door shut. But since I've got into this and I ventilate properly now, I don't have any problems with headaches, and I can work a whole day fresh, and I don't feel sleepy in the afternoon or anything. So that's
just say that probably the simplest sort of 2,000 parts per million is 1%. So all that happens might be body adapts. It's in the atmosphere.
It is in the atmosphere, but it's
in this room now.
It is. So the moment in here, so it's not just me saying, I'm not drawing an inference from my experiment. I'm just confirming what I've seen in studies. So yeah, people do adapt, and different people are sensitive to different degrees.
You read a higher level. Very slightly.
Fine. Well, I beg to differ on that, because I'm not drawing these conclusions from one experiment. I'm sorry. I'm drawing these conclusions from papers I've read on the subject. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So sleeping with a window. How many people here sleep with the window open? Quite a few. So that quite a few people say, I can't sleep without the window open. And the reason for that is it's two things. It's getting rid of the carbon dioxide in the room, and it's getting rid of the humidity that you're breathing out when you're sleeping. And studies show that you will sleep more deeply, you'll sleep better, and you'll have better concentration the following day if you sleep in a room that's properly ventilated, and opening the window is obviously the simplest way of doing that. And a couple of experiments that I have just want to show you here. This is one of a bedroom situation. So this is not dissimilar to the experiment that I did with somebody going to bed at sort of 10:30 at night. The carbon dioxide levels were rising through the night until 6 o'clock in the morning. And then when they got up to nearly 3,300 parts per million. And then when they opened the door in the morning, the carbon dioxide levels fell back down dramatically. And on the following day, the same experiment, same situation, they left the door open. And as you can see, the carbon dioxide levels were significantly lower, the maximum of about 1,200 parts per million. And these are some experiments that were done on some student accommodation, showing the difference in carbon dioxide levels in the room between, again, sleeping overnight. The maximum levels achieved in those various bedrooms with windows being closed, which is the black bars, and the green bars were the same sort of situations repeated with the same people, showing much lower levels of sort of 600, 700, 800 parts per million for student accommodation situations. So leaving the window open and ventilating a bedroom makes a significant difference on carbon dioxide levels in a room. Hello.
If live continuously.
Yes.
In this pathway,
Yes.
and your bedroom's at the front.
Yeah.
You leave your window open.
Yeah.
Is that not the ventilation?
You talking about road pollution? Yes.
You live in the city.
Yes.
Cars.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
You just like living in a proper Israel, or whatever.
Yeah.
Is there a need for a balance?
Yes, there is a balance, absolutely. Yes, so if you are in a polluted road situation, absolutely, you have to look at different strategies, such as ventilating at the back of a home, for example, where the pollution levels are higher. So unfortunately, this is a really complicated situation, which is why there are no hard and fast rules for it. So what I'm talking about here is the general goal is to try and ventilate if you can, and if you are in a polluted area, you need to take measures to work around that. Yeah. Yeah.
And does that make a difference?
The further you are back from a road, the more difference it will make. Sure. Yeah.
The leaves. Oh.
Yeah. I'm not an expert on ingress of outdoor pollution into a home, but I know that there are mitigating factors such as the further you are from the road and the pollution levels at the back are lower. So my expectation would be that trees would make a difference, simply from the point of view of screening, physical screening.
Yeah.
But I don't know to what degree. I was in a village hall a few weeks ago doing the same talk, and the room was got about 50 or 60 people in it, and there was no ventilation at all in the room. And after about an hour, the levels were at 2,400, and actually in here it's about 600. So this room actually is better ventilated than I expected it might be. So this is pretty good result. And people were sort of finding it starting to rub their head and rub their faces, etc. as well. So my general observation on indoor air pollution of whatever sort it is, and particularly carbon dioxide, is that it rockets up. Carbon dioxide rockets up, and it only comes down really slowly unless you take action to actually get rid of it. So what can you do to take charge of this? First of all, it's looking out for the symptoms that a room might be polluted. So in a lounge situation, it might be that you're starting to nod off, you're starting to rub your eyes, and it might be a combination of carbon dioxide, high humidity, and those things will contribute to you feeling sleepy, drowsy, and finding it hard to concentrate and nodding off on the sofa. So look out for signs, whether it's that sort of situation or the situation in the candle bar that I was in a few months back as well. And as I said earlier, if you can smell something that smells like an unnatural substance, like in terms of something being burnt or something with a chemical smell, then that's a signal that perhaps that isn't a healthy environment. So those are some of the things you can look out for. And you can invest if you want to get into this. There's a whole variety of different types of indoor air quality monitor. Unfortunately, there isn't one thing that can tell you all you need to know or all that you need to do. So you have to be a bit geeky to get into this, but there are loads out there, and I can make some recommendations. But the silver bullet for all these things, whether that's pollution from cooking, pollution from chemicals, pollution from breathing or pet dander or or dust mites or whatever it might be, or carbon dioxide for that matter, the silver bullet is ventilation. If you can do it and it's appropriate to the outdoor conditions as we talked about a few minutes ago. So ventilating is something that's taken very seriously in the commercial environment. So this is the ventilation system on the left here in a gym, and the one on the right here is a commercial kitchen. Those sorts of environments and modern offices take this very, very seriously, because it affects not just the health outcomes of people, but also their personal productivity as well. So ventilating and more than you think you need to, as well, is my recommendation from my experiences. All right. Yeah.
They're sucking stale air out.
Yeah. Yeah. So with commercial office ones, and this is a gym one, they've got an inlet as well. Kitchens tend to be just extract, and they'll bring fresh air in through the restaurant or the back door. From what I've seen, is how that works. So the ventilation essentials in a home situation is trickle vents have been mandatory now since June last year on all new and replacement windows, except in exceptional circumstances such as areas of historic areas and where there are strong planning issues around having them. They're there for a reason. They're there to get rid of indoor pollution. And unless it's a very windy day, they are barely adequate, I would say. It's probably the best way to describe how they're generally regarded in terms of the air change that they give. And they were actually enlarged a few years ago to try and improve their effect. But most people keep them closed, and they shouldn't. They should be open unless it's really strong wind, in which case you're probably over ventilating. The they are there for your health more than anything else. If you haven't got them, leave your windows on, or at least one or two around the house on a window latch, on the security latch. If you can create a little bit of cross-flow ventilation from one side of the home to the other, rather than just having a window open on one side, studies have shown that's sort of around 3 times better, certainly significantly better than just opening windows on one side. And undercuts on doors are really important. If your carpet meets the bottom of your door and there's no way for air to circulate from your trickle vent in your bedroom through your house through to your bathroom or vice versa, then you're not going to have circulation or ventilation working very well internally in the home. So an undercut on a door should be at least 10 millimeters, and up to sort of 22 would be the maximum you need to. But if you've got nothing at all, like some people have, then you're not going to be helping the ventilation system indoors in a home. Another ventilation technique that's used in Europe, and it's commonly known in Germany, and that's where it's most famous for being used, is called Stoßlüften, which is shop ventilation, where Germans will open all the windows and all the doors a couple of times a day, several minutes. So they open it all, they purge all the stale air in the home, all the humid air in the home, and then shut them, and then that's actually a really effective way of clearing out the poor quality indoor air and refreshing it. And that's still very commonly done in Germany and in a number of other European countries as well. It's something that seems alien to us because it seems like it's going to be a significant loss of heat, but actually it isn't. And I said at the very beginning that air in homes doesn't hold very much heat. If you take a 3-bed semi, for example, the volume of that house is around, let's say, 250 cubic meters. If the inside temperature is 20 degrees, and the outside temperature is 10, and you open all the windows and all the doors and let all the stale warm air out, and you bring fresh cooler air in, the cost of reheating all that air back up to 20 degrees C is actually tiny. It's actually a loss of about 1 kilowatt hour of lost energy by doing all that. which costs about 6p only in gas to reheat it. Most of the energy in a home is stored in the walls and the floors, in your furniture, in your sofa, in your kitchen appliances, in your kitchen, etc., etc. The air itself holds very little very little energy. So shock ventilation is a very efficient, very quick way of doing it, and it loses very little energy. The best solution of all, though, for a home, and modern homes, new build homes now are increasingly using these sorts of things, is where you have a very airtight home, but you have an active fan-based system that draws stale air from kitchens and bathrooms in particular, and brings fresh air into the house in other rooms, and you have a circulation of air through the home, and the stale air, the heat from the stale air is passed over to the incoming air through a heat exchanger in the loft. So you have a box in the loft like that, which does all this continually in the background, very, very gently, refreshing the air, but capturing the heat from the air that's extracted whilst it's doing it. These things cost very little to run, but they give you very, very good indoor air quality. So they're continually purging pollution, fantastic air and sleep quality, and it completely limits, these systems completely eliminate condensation and mold issues, and towels and laundry. You can dry indoors, and they dry really, really quickly. So there are some bonuses to ventilation. So ventilation is a silver bullet in most situations to the health issues and the productivity issues that sealed homes create. There are bonuses if you ventilate as well, which are also worth having and mentioning. Something like 1 in 3 homes in the UK has damp or mold or condensation issues. And ventilation, adequate ventilation of whatever sort, will actually prevent those. Common solutions today are to turn the heating up, or run dehumidifiers, which are both very expensive solutions, or just live with stuffy, uncomfortable, clammy, humid homes, which isn't very nice. So ventilation solves damp issues as well as making homes more comfortable. One of the second bonus, I should say, is one of the products of COVID was an understanding that ventilation, a well enough ventilated home, actually reduces the transmission of viruses from one person to another. So rather than you living in a home which is sealed up with, fine molecules of virus, for example, floating around in the atmosphere in a home, ventilating allows that to be ejected or extracted before it can cause harm to others. So transmission of viruses in homes with good ventilation is really helpful from that point of view. There's a third bonus, which is that ventilation in a home, for all the reasons I've talked about, for humans, also affects pets to the same degree. So pets are also affected by the sorts of things I talked about earlier, and they will benefit if you ventilate a home as well. And then lastly, the fourth bonus is if you ventilate a home, in my view, you don't need to bother with any air freshener products. This is my local Sainsbury's. There are 150 different products there to deodorize homes and make homes smell fresher. In my view, they're all completely unnecessary. I've never used them. I can't think why anyone actually needs to, especially if they ventilate a home properly, and especially as most of them say you need to anyway. So to finish off, I've got some other talks I do, which I know you've seen one of them, which was the talk I did in December last year on misinformation. So that's still streamable, lifting the lid on the techniques, the tools and techniques, and the skullduggery that goes on about how misinformation is propagated and deliberately created and fools people into thinking in non-evidence-based ways. I also do a talk on how the UK is really doing in tackling climate change. We hear the statements about the UK has achieved most in the G7, etc., etc. What's the truth behind it, and where are the challenges, and how to keep positive? And I also do a talk about electric vehicles and what are the facts and the experiences and the myths, because my background is also car industry many years ago, and I've worked in energy for 15 years, so I know that side of it, and I've been an EV driver for over 10 years. So my last take-home message for you is homes cannot be healthy, comfortable, or efficient without adequate ventilation. Thank you.